The Antikythera mechanism sat at the bottom of the Mediterranean for over 2,000 years. When divers finally pulled it from a shipwreck in 1901, it looked like a corroded lump of bronze. But X-ray scans revealed something impossible. A machine with over 30 interlocking gears, designed to calculate astronomical positions decades into the future. No device of comparable complexity would appear again for another 1,400 years. This wasn't supposed to exist. Ancient civilizations are often dismissed as primitive, limited by crude tools and superstition. Yet, scattered across museums and archaeological sites are objects that shatter that assumption. These aren't ceremonial trinkets or decorative art. They're functional devices built with precision engineering, mathematical sophistication, and an understanding of mechanics that shouldn't have been possible. Some predicted celestial events, others calculated time with unsettling accuracy. A few seem designed for purposes we still can't fully explain. What makes these discoveries so disturbing isn't just their complexity. It's the gaps they expose in our understanding of history. If ancient engineers could build machines that rival modern technology, what else did they create? And more troubling, what knowledge was lost when those civilizations collapsed? The Antikythera mechanism is the most famous example, but it's far from the only one. In 1900, a Greek sponge diver surfaced with fragments of bronze from a Roman shipwreck off the coast of Antikythera Island. Initially catalogued as an astrolabe or clock, the object was largely ignored for decades. Then, in the 1970s, radiographic imaging revealed its true structure. Inside the encrusted exterior were dozens of bronze gears, some as small as coins, arranged in a configuration that resembled a clockwork computer. Researchers eventually decoded its function. The device tracked the cycles of the sun and moon, predicted eclipses, and calculated the positions of planets. It even accounted for the irregular orbit of the moon using an epicyclic gear system, a technique not rediscovered until the Renaissance. Inscriptions on the mechanism referenced the Olympiad calendar and the Saros cycle, a 223-month pattern used to predict eclipses. This wasn't guesswork, it was engineered foresight. But here's what unsettles modern engineers. The Antikythera mechanism required advanced knowledge of differential gearing, a concept not formally documented until the 1500s. Whoever built it understood planetary motion, mechanical advantage, and precision metalworking at a level that suggests an entire tradition of similar devices. Yet no blueprints exist, no manuals, no other examples have been found. If this was part of a broader technological lineage, where did it go? One theory is that such devices were so valuable they were melted down during economic crises or wars. Bronze was expensive, and a complex machine could be reduced to raw material in hours. Another possibility is that the knowledge was restricted, guarded by a small group of engineers and lost when they died without apprentices. Either way, the mechanism stands alone, a fragment of a lost technological era. And it's not the only example. In Baghdad, archaeologists discovered a clay jar that shouldn't function as anything more than storage, except it does. The Baghdad battery, unearthed in 1936, consists of a ceramic pot, a copper cylinder, and an iron rod. When filled with an acidic liquid like vinegar or wine, it generates a small electrical current. The design matches that of a rudimentary galvanic cell, the same principle used in modern batteries. Skeptics argue it was used for electroplating jewelry, a process that would have given ancient goldsmiths a competitive edge. Others suggest it had a ritual purpose, perhaps producing a mild shock for religious ceremonies. But no one disputes the central fact. Someone in Mesopotamia, over 2,000 years ago, created a device that stores and releases electrical energy. The question isn't whether it worked, it's whether they understood what they'd built. Then there's the Nimrud lens, a polished rock crystal discovered in the ruins of the ancient Assyrian city of Nimrud. Dated to around 750 BCE, it's been examined by opticians who confirmed it functions as a magnifying lens. But magnification requires an understanding of refraction and focal points, concepts not formally studied until centuries later. Was it used for precision engraving, astronomical observation, or was it simply decorative, its optical properties an unintended side effect? What these objects share is a disturbing implication. They suggest that ancient societies possessed technical knowledge far beyond what their surviving records indicate. Writing systems prioritized administration, religion, and law, not engineering manuals. If a craft tradition relied on apprenticeship rather than documentation, entire fields of expertise could vanish in a single generation. And sometimes the devices themselves hint at knowledge that seems impossible for their time. In China, seismologists discovered records of an instrument that detected earthquakes from hundreds of miles away. Built in 132 CE by the inventor Zhang Heng, the device didn't just sense tremors, it indicated the direction they came from. Modern replicas have confirmed its function, though the exact internal mechanism remains a mystery. Zhang Heng's original was lost centuries ago, and with it, the engineering principles that made it work. But perhaps the most unsettling pattern isn't what these devices could do. It's how quickly the knowledge behind them disappeared. Civilizations rose, built machines of staggering complexity, then collapsed, leaving behind only fragments. What we call the ancient world may have been far more advanced than we assume, and if entire traditions of science and engineering can vanish without a trace, what does that say about our own? The Library of Alexandria burned. The House of Wisdom in Baghdad was destroyed. The Mayan codices were systematically incinerated by Spanish conquistadors who saw only heresy in what may have been astronomical tables and engineering records. Each time knowledge was lost, it wasn't just information that vanished. It was the infrastructure of understanding that made such information possible. Consider what happens when a civilization collapses. The first thing to go isn't the tools or the buildings. It's the social network that maintains expertise. A master craftsman dies without teaching their apprentice. A library burns before its contents are copied. A war displaces the engineers who understood how their own creations functioned. Within a generation, complex devices become mysterious relics. Within two, they become legends. This pattern repeats throughout history with disturbing consistency. Roman concrete recipes were lost for over a millennium. Greek fire, the Byzantine Empire's devastating naval weapon, vanished completely. We still don't know what it was made of or how it worked. All that remains are terrified accounts from those who witnessed it burning on water. The medieval period offers a particularly stark example. European scholars spent centuries trying to reconstruct knowledge that had been commonplace in the ancient world. Basic Greek mathematics had to be reintroduced through Arabic translations. Medical practices that had been standard in Alexandria were forgotten, replaced by superstition and guesswork. It wasn't ignorance that caused this collapse. It was disruption. When the networks that preserve and transmit knowledge break down, even advanced civilizations can slide backward. But some losses feel more deliberate. The Antikythera mechanism wasn't just forgotten. It disappeared so completely that when it was discovered, experts initially refused to believe it was ancient. For over a century, archaeologists and historians had constructed a narrative of technological progress that didn't allow for gear-driven computers in ancient Greece. The device contradicted the accepted timeline. So, rather than revising the timeline, many scholars simply dismissed the artifact. This raises an uncomfortable question. How much of what we believe about ancient technological capability is based on evidence, and how much is based on assumption? We assume that if a civilization possessed advanced knowledge, they would have left extensive written records. But what if they didn't? What if entire fields of engineering were considered too valuable to document, passed down only through direct instruction? The Incas built earthquake-resistant stone structures using a technique called ashlar masonry. Massive boulders were cut and fitted together so precisely that no mortar was needed, and the joints were so tight that even today you can't slip a piece of paper between them. Yet the Incas had no written language. Their knowledge was encoded in oral tradition and physical practice. When the Spanish conquest disrupted that transmission, the technique was lost. We can see the results of their work, but we can't replicate their process. This is the real danger of lost knowledge. It's not that we forget what was built. It's that we forget how to think in the ways that made building possible. The cognitive frameworks, the mental models that allowed ancient engineers to solve problems, vanish along with the artifacts. And sometimes we lose things we didn't even know we had. In 1900, divers discovered the Antikythera wreck by accident. How many other shipwrecks are scattered across the ocean floor, carrying devices we'll never find? How many ancient libraries burned before anyone thought to catalog their contents? How many inventions were dismissed as impossible simply because they didn't fit our assumptions about what ancient people could achieve? The archaeological record is full of gaps. We find the spectacular, the pyramids, the Parthenon, the Great Wall, but the mundane often disappears. Wooden tools rot. Textile innovations decay. Everyday technology leaves almost no trace. What survives is filtered through the biases of preservation. Stone over wood, gold over iron, monumental over practical. So when we look at the Antikythera mechanism, the Baghdad battery, or the Nimrud lens, we're not just looking at isolated anomalies. We're glimpsing a shadow, a hint of technical traditions that were once widespread but are now almost entirely erased. Each artifact is a survivor, a fragment that made it through the filter of time by sheer chance. The lesson isn't that ancient civilizations were secretly as advanced as ours. It's that technological progress isn't linear. Knowledge can be gained, lost, and gained again. Civilizations can rise to remarkable heights, then collapse so completely that their achievements become unbelievable to those who come after. We like to think we're different, that our knowledge is safe, digitized, backed up, redundant. But digital storage is fragile. Formats become obsolete. Servers fail. Companies go bankrupt. If our civilization faced a sudden collapse, how much of what we know would survive? Perhaps the real mystery isn't what the ancients built. It's what we've forgotten we're at risk of losing. Because the devices are just metal and stone. What vanishes is the ability to conceive of them in the first place. And once that's gone, even holding the evidence in your hands won't help you understand what you're looking at. The Antikythera mechanism was found by chance. So was the Baghdad battery. The Nimrud lens survived only because it was buried in ash. These discoveries weren't the result of systematic searches. They were accidents. Which means the question isn't just what we've lost. It's what's still out there, waiting to be uncovered, or already found and misunderstood. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. We can only recognize what we're prepared to see. When the Antikythera mechanism was first pulled from the sea, it sat in a museum for 70 years before anyone realized what it was. Not because experts weren't looking at it, because they couldn't conceive of what they were looking at. Their framework didn't allow for it. How many other artifacts are sitting in storage right now, cataloged as ritual objects or decorative pieces, when they're actually something far more significant? How many were thrown away by early archaeologists who didn't recognize their function? The filter isn't just time and decay. It's our own assumptions about what's possible. And that's the real warning these devices carry. Not that ancient civilizations were more advanced than we thought, but that knowledge itself is more fragile than we want to believe. It doesn't take a catastrophe to lose it. Just disruption. Just time. Just the quiet failure of one generation to pass understanding to the next. We are not immune. Our cities are more complex, our systems more interconnected, our knowledge base more vast, which also means we're more vulnerable. Because when everything depends on infrastructure, digital, social, educational, the collapse doesn't have to be total to be devastating. It just has to break the chain. The ancient world built machines that predicted the future, then forgot how. The question we should be asking isn't what they knew. It's what we're forgetting right now.